Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, and James Comey, Brennan, all the rest, any public servant at the federal level, an officer under at least the definition of the Constitution, can be impeached and tried, whether or not they're in service, whether or not they're in office. So Obama can be impeached. Heck, we can impeach Bill Clinton again. Maybe we go back and impeach, if you're a leftist, maybe you go back and impeach George W. Bush. Where does it end? But the left has set the new standard. And prudence may dictate that you don't follow the course I'm suggesting. But I would suggest that what went on in the Obama administration is worthy of impeachment, that what Hillary Clinton did is worthy of impeachment. As you may know, or you should be paying attention to it if you aren't, I don't blame you, because it is a big joke in terms of it not having any substance. But the President Trump was impeached by the House in a summary proceeding that allowed him to present no evidence. In fact, there was no evidence gathering at all, practically speaking. And so it made a mockery of the very notion of due process in the House of Representatives. And so, but it was a power grab by the House Democrats, in the sense that they saw an opportunity, using the emotion and anger over the rioting that took place, to try to tar and feather, constitutionally speaking, President Trump. And so they powered through this impeachment in a summary fashion, as I said, rolling over the rights of President Trump, and they moved it into the Senate. Now, what needed to be resolved in the Senate constitutionally is that whether a former officer could be tried, meaning a former public official. There were arguments on both sides. I actually tended to believe that, yes, a former president can be impeached. I've been consistent in that. I thought Obama could have been impeached. I thought Hillary Clinton could have been and should have been impeached. But I understand there are arguments on the other side, especially at the presidential level. But now all of that's been settled, because the Senate voted that they do have jurisdiction. So there's no more question anymore. Obviously, the president's now being tried, but now it's been settled, right? There is jurisdiction for former government officials, meaning that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and James Comey, Brennan, all the rest, any public servant at the federal level, an officer under at least the definition of the Constitution, can be impeached and tried, whether or not they're in service, whether or not they're in office. So Obama can be impeached. Heck, we can impeach Bill Clinton again. Maybe we go back and impeach, if you're a leftist, maybe you go back and impeach George W. Bush. Where does it end? But the left has set the new standard. And prudence may dictate that you don't follow the course I'm suggesting. But I would suggest that what went on in the Obama administration is worthy of impeachment, that what Hillary Clinton did is worthy of impeachment, especially since the Justice Department is thoroughly corrupted. The FBI is thoroughly broken and politicized, and there's no indication, and there's proof, positive, that they are unable to investigate or target anyone who's part of the protected classes here in Washington, D.C. So the trial has proceeded, and it opened up, and I guess there were a lot of people disappointed with the way the president's lawyers handled the first part of the proceeding. The defense occurred today, and let me just say, the case put on by the impeachment managers was a wild abuse of any sense of due process and justice. Fake videos, and by fake meaning edited it in a way to change the actual meaning of the words they're presenting. So when you cut someone off in mid-sentence or take a phrase out of context and present it to suggest something that is at odds with the original context, that's fake. That's lying. That's obstruction, and it's abuse of power by the House managers. Frankly, the House managers should be subject to ethics investigations the way they handle this case. Doctoring tweets, uh, purposely misleading and misreading them. The president neither morally nor legally incited any insurrection. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, there's a legal definition. You go into court, there's a criminal charge, there's incitement, and there are certain standards the courts have found you need to meet, that the prosecutors need to meet if they're going to pursue an indictment or a prosecution. Now, it's a political process on the Hill in terms of this impeachment trial, so they're not bound by the legal niceties. And I don't mean that to be derogatory, meaning that there can be a lesser standard. They don't have to meet the criminal standard necessarily. They do what they want. That's why it's important that there be at least some reasonable due process checks. But when he was talking about fighting and he was talking about standing up for your rights and things like that, he wasn't encouraging anyone to commit violence. He wasn't. And I think his defense team made a good point of that today. And in fact, what they're trying to do, the left that's running this show, is they're trying to outlaw free speech. They're trying to make it clear that if you raise objections to the way the elections were conducted, or raise objections potentially to the way future elections are to be conducted, you'll be guilty of inciting violence. And of course, there are political benefits to this impeachment charade. I think, I was talking to a reporter today, and it occurred to me that the left, as always, the left does it. Because remember, I know we're all worried about the left, but we have to remember the human beings. And like every other human being, including yours truly, you're all susceptible to thinking things are going to work out one way when in fact they work out another, and miscalculating. And, they're human beings too. So they're not omniscient, they don't know everything and how it's going to work. And they may have a lot of power, but life comes at you fast. And in this case, I think they thought that given the anger and emotion around the riot, they could ram through the impeachment in the House and force the Senate Republicans to collapse and push Trump out, meaning convict him. And it didn't work out that way. So now they're kind of stuck with this albatross of an impeachment, and they're trying to do what they can do. Standards of justice don't apply. The president doesn't deserve any rights traditionally afforded anyone similarly accused in any proceeding that has the patina of constitutionalism around it. And so it's going to be done. But in the meantime, I encourage you to call your senators at 202-224-3121. That's 202-224-3121. And let them know what you think about this impeachment charade. If they're doing what you want them to do, applaud them. If they're not doing what they want you to do, let them know. They want to hear from you. I know people say they don't want to hear from you. They do want to hear from you. Even senators who think you think have no interest in what you say, don't you believe it? They're very much aware. They're like human they're like human weather vanes. Many of them are. And so they want to hear what you have to say because they want to know where to point. They rely on those phone calls as metrics to help them conduct their business in their office. I mean, it's true. So I encourage you to communicate with your senators. So, on the other hand, I go hot and cold on this, right? I'm outraged, and I think it's the worst thing in the world. On the other hand, it looks like a big failure. But you can have big failures that damage the body politic and damage our liberties. I'm sure you share my concern about the effort to deplatform conservatism, deplatform any opposition to the radical rising left agenda. I mean, this impeachment's about deplatforming President Trump from our nation's public life. He's already been deplatformed from Twitter. Facebook has targeted him. Other other big social media has targeted him. Others have been deplatformed. I am still locked out from Twitter. I am still locked out from Twitter. Judicial Watch is being suppressed generally as to what we say and what we can do on these various platforms. We're looking at other alternatives, but in the meantime, we got to try to educate people as best we can in the atmosphere we have. So it's restrictive. And they want to further restrict us. And so this is the danger. And I'm sure, and I say I complain about Judicial Watch, I complain about me, but I'm sure you're facing it. You must be thinking, well, if I type this on Facebook, am I going to get thrown off Facebook? If I type this on Twitter, am I going to get thrown off Twitter? Do I have to worry about the IRS now? Do I have to worry about the FBI? Because I said the word fight in an email? Is that the new standard? Core political speech, common everyday phrases can subject you to criminal scrutiny? Well, that's what the left is saying. Unless, of course, they use those words, right? I mean, that's what the president's legal team highlighted today. Fight, 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 fight. It's okay for the left to say it, and actually in the context of violent riots, but it's not okay for the president to use it in a regular speech. Now, remember, on top of the abuse of the president, we have the abuse of really the First Amendment rights of every American citizen with the militarization of Capitol Hill. I would have loved to go up and watch the Senate trial. I watched the Senate trial last year for a period of time. I stayed as long as I could bear. But there's no way I was going to get in this time because it's on lockdown. We've militarized our nation's capital. It's never happened before, or at least Capitol Hill. I'm not aware of it ever happening before like this in American history. I'm not sure what the security reasons are for doing it. So your right to petition your government is restricted. Try it. You want to go visit your congressman? Good luck. I don't know how. I wouldn't even know how to do that. I'm president of Judicial Watch. I mean, the fact that I would have to kind of figure out how to do that. I mean, our offices are in Washington, D.C. So think of the big perimeter going around Capitol Hill. Our offices are just outside the fence line. We're on the other side of Pelosi's wall, and we can't get in. And we're the nation's largest and most effective government watchdog group, and we can't watch Congress. At the same time, our military is deployed in unprecedented fashion on Capitol Hill. It's being undeployed in the border. Joe Biden has just announced that he's withdrawing the declaration of emergency that President Trump rightly initiated that allowed him to both build the wall on the border and support our security there with additional military. All bets are off now. Our border's getting opened up. No security on the border, but outrageous security on Capitol Hill in a way that is political. Remember, those troops up there, they're being deployed away from their homes. They're not being trained or being deployed to do something else more substantial. So it's all political. I mean, how third world is it that they are putting on trial a former president for First Amendment protected speech in a compound surrounded by the military? And of course, our military itself is under assault, even has Congress support, uses it as political props. You have the leftists now running the Pentagon, going through some type of purge to make sure there are no Trump supporters or conservatives in the military, and try to scare the bejesus out of anyone who might be a conservative activist. These are treacherous times for our constitutional republic, I think. These are treacherous times. And I'm not just here yelling about it. Believe me, Judicial Watch is launching Freedom of Information Act requests, launching public records requests, looking at the legality of what is going on Capitol Hill. I mean, the fact that I'm not on Twitter doesn't mean that Judicial Watch is shut down, believe me. Because Republicans are afraid to talk about any of this. What happened on the riot? What happened during the riot? Other reporters have highlighted this as well. Some key fact. We don't know some key facts. What is the security threat that justifies this unprecedented and historic use of the military, seemingly in perpetuity, on Capitol Hill? Is there going to be a military base up there now? I mean, those are the sorts of questions that no one's getting answers to. We have this investigation into the death of that police officer. It's not clear how he died. What's going on? I mean, this is a riot that led to the impeachment of a president of the United States, and we don't know basics about it. The woman who was killed, who was shot by the police officer, she was unarmed. I'm not saying the police officer did anything wrong, but I don't know who the police officer is. What were the findings about how that happened? But because it's Congress, the Freedom of Information Act doesn't apply to Congress. And so Judicial Watch has tried other ways to try to get documents through common records, common law, right to know laws. But it's always a fight. It's always a fight. So the president is unlikely to be convicted. He will be abused. And this abuse is inexcusable. And it should never have been allowed to happen. And I blame the Republican leadership in the Senate for allowing it to happen. I mean, you think, well, just because there's a majority of Democrats, there's nothing Republicans can do to stop this type of activity from happening. That's not true. That's simply not true. They could have short-circuited this trial, for instance, if they put their heads to it. But they didn't want to. Of course, this is the second time that's happened. It's the second time it's happened because it's about a year ago now that we had the first impeachment. And I was joking, they're going to impeach him again. And sure enough, they have. And now that the precedent's been set that you can impeach former presidents, they will impeach him again, I guarantee you. I shouldn't say I guarantee you. It would not surprise me. Would it surprise you? Would it surprise you? And let me just say, I'm giving him my point of view. I'm giving him my considered opinion, more or less. But you know this stuff as much as I do. I watch it maybe a little bit more closely than some others, but you know what's happening here. You know what's happening here. It's about getting Trump. It's about the 2024 campaign. It's not about the Constitution. It's not about objecting to violence. The left doesn't object to violence. There was this Time magazine piece last week or the week before last that described the leftist the leftist conspiracy on the 2020 election. And one of the parts of the article, and I may have mentioned this last week, that I found most intriguing in the sense that it confirmed what everyone kind of knew, is that this leftist cabal could turn on and turn off violent protests like a spigot. That's in the Time article. You can read it. So they don't care about violence. They use it when they want. And their concern about the riot is universally shared in this regard, in the sense that no one supports violence in that regard. But they don't always oppose violence. I know I have always opposed the sort of violence we've seen at the political level here in the United States. I, for instance, think if the Insurrection Act had been invoked, as I've been calling on President Trump to do it here in the District of Columbia, that we would have had better security up on Capitol Hill and could have prevented the riot from taking place. So this is about politics. This is about suppression of speech. And this is about targeting President Trump, taking him off the chessboard, so to speak. And it's going to fail in part, but succeed in part. They've given cover to their allies in leftist big tech to suppress President Trump and others, including Judicial Watch. Now, I don't know if you've seen recently, Project Veritas has been bounced off of Twitter, suspended. That's the group run by James O'Keefe that does excellent investigative reporting and exposés on the corrupt left. They're friends of ours, and it's outrageous to see. So I'm locked out. Project Veritas has been suspended. James O'Keefe himself was locked out for a little bit, but he got himself put back on somehow. So they're broadening the suppression. They're broadening it. But we're not going to stop. We're just going to keep on fighting, dare I say it, in court, in a court of public opinion, by educating people. I mean, just think about this. And I'm not tooting my own horn, but I'm the president of America's largest government watchdog group, Judicial Watch. And I've been knocked off of a key social media public platform, Twitter, for over a month during a presidential transition, inauguration, during a presidential impeachment, and during an incoming presidential administration, new one. So I'm a government watchdog, one of the most well-known in the country, practically speaking, right? Certainly on the right. And I can't talk about what the Biden administration is up to. I can't talk about this impeachment on Twitter. I'm on elsewhere. I'm on Telegram. I'm on, we're on YouTube here, but even that's restricted in part about what I can say. I'm on Facebook still, but still. So it's like a third world country in some respects. I'm being oppressed. You're being oppressed because I speak for you, don't I, in some respects? At least I hope I do. But I can't speak for you, at least on Twitter. James O'Keefe, Project Veritas, can't speak for you on Twitter. We're restricted in what we can say even on YouTube. So they are oppressing opponents of policies that they are sympathetic to. And they're trying to stop people like Judicial Watch and me from talking about corruption issues related to politicians they sympathize to. How is that not third world? Actually, you know what? If it were third world, there would be more objection to it because it would be obvious. There wouldn't be this pretense that the totalitarian left in here has, that they're against misinformation and other Orwellian terms designed to dehumanize and dismiss their opponents. I mean, we have more litigation on this deplatforming or this retaliation by the totalitarian left coming up next week. But it's all over the place. Did you see this poor actor was fired from this Disney show, this Mandalorian show, because she raised concerns about the suppression of speech. And Disney fired her, just outright. She didn't say anything. I'm not going to get into the fight about what she said or didn't say. She did not say anything controversial, relatively speaking. She did not. Straightforward political analysis that everyone else says and has said about how it's dangerous to try to suppress the free speech of your political opponents. And for that, she was fired by Disney, who does business with China happily. Just unbelievable. I don't know if she's going to sue anyone about it, but I know some lawyers if she needs to.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.